Hi, everyone. It's Rebecca Snow, owner and supervisor with the Nutrition Herb Collective. And today we're going to be talking about creating talks for the community, how to engage your audience. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. I will start by telling you that I've been doing talks for the community since 2013 was probably the first year. No, not 2013. 2003 was the first year I gave a talk in the community. And I would say the biggest mistake I made in my first talk was trying to deliver academic content to a layperson community. And I see a lot of interns I work with make the same mistake because you've just finished your master's degree, you're excited about all this content, but how do you whittle that down for somebody who's completely new to this topic? All right, so let's see here. So I've learned a lot since then, and I wanted to share some tips on how to create talks for the community. What are some things I've learned over the years that have helped me be more successful with those talks? First thing is when you start a talk, you do want to give an overview. You want to introduce yourself as a speaker, talk a little bit about your background and your credentials, so people have an understanding about why you know anything about this topic, or why they should trust you. It is a good idea when you are getting ready to prepare to present a topic is to create an outline and to write learning outcomes, because it's really easy to get too big with the topic. Talking about nutrition is just way too general. You could talk about sugar, you could talk about fat, you could talk about eating for optimal energy, you could talk about how to balance your blood sugar, how to eat for optimal sleep. In general, people are attracted to talks that are about a specific topic that benefit them. Once you have your topic, then write learning outcomes. So if you're talking about how to balance your blood sugar, you really want to think specifically that you want for instance, a learning outcome could be participants will understand what a low glycemic diet is. Participants will apply their knowledge of a low glycemic diet to creating healthy, balanced breakfast and lunches for their families. There are other terms you can use to replace these verbs, but in general, your learning outcomes start with a verb, and Bloom's taxonomy is a useful little diagram here to kind of help you identify the specific learning outcomes for your talk. In the write-up on the website, you'll see there's a link to some suggestions on how to write learning outcomes. And then once you've written your outcomes and you have your outline, when you create, if you're creating a PowerPoint, then communicate that in the first slide. What are you going to be covering today or in this talk? It is important to speak at your participants' level. Now, in general, when you're creating education for the community, it's important to speak at a fourth grade reading level. Now, actually, when you are in, I don't know if Google has this, Google Doc, but when you're in Microsoft, you can actually gauge the reading level of any document you're creating. If you go to under tools, if you go to spelling and grammar, it'll tell you the readability of your document. So most people write at a ninth grade reading level, but really we want to communicate at a very simple level. Remember that you value health, but your listener doesn't necessarily value health. My understanding is that when consumers rank the reasons for their food choices, there are three factors that usually rate higher than health, and that is cost, convenience, and taste. So remember who you're talking to. I recommend talking to friends and family who don't know anything about the topic that you're going to be presenting on, so you can get find out their questions about the topic. What do they want to learn about? What don't they know? What do they know? Um, and that'll help you figure out what content to include. If you're doing let's say your talk is on, just to keep with the theme, blood sugar balance, and you have an hour, then I would not spend 30 minutes on physiology. I might spend 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, but the rest should really be application, engagement, and applying the knowledge. Avoid death by PowerPoint. Love this term, death by PowerPoint. Everyone's been in that talk where people are just reading off the slide and you're so bored, and you could take a nap. So we definitely don't want to do that. We don't want to read the slides. A good rule of thumb is the 6x6 rule. So no more than 6 lines per slide, no more than 6 words per line. That can be difficult to do. We definitely don't want a lot of content on our slides because people are not going to be able to read the slide and listen to you at the same time. Using images and graphics is a wonderful way to represent material. And remember, a picture is 1,000 words. So here I have an example of a talk that I did. And to illustrate what high glycemic foods are, I put a bunch of pictures on a slide, and that is a good jumping off place to discuss examples of high glycemic meals or how to identify a high glycemic meal. I love using presenter tools because for a slide like that, in the presenter tools, I can have some tips on how to read the label for grams of sugar, grams of fiber, grams of protein. For instance, a good rule of thumb for a loaf of bread or a slice of bread rather would be no more than 3 grams of sugar, at least 3 grams of fiber, at least 2 to 3 grams of protein would be a good starting place for a more balanced slice of bread. So presenter tools are useful. And now you do want to check the setup that you have for presenting. For instance, right now on this Facebook Live, I can't see my presenter tools, but I'm not doing super heavy content where I have to remember a biochemical pathway. So I, can just speak off the top of my head. So you do want to think about the specific scenario that you're in. Are you going to be able to see your presenter tools? Avoid information overload, which we kind of touched on already with death by PowerPoint. But ultimately, by sticking to your topic and planning well in the beginning, you will be speaking to that specific topic and it'll be harder to have information overload. Staying on time, you want to keep an eye on the time. You can always assign somebody in the audience to be a timekeeper for you. So if you're not good, you could have them give you a 15-minute warning. And then you might have to look at the remaining slides and decide which content you're going to cut out if you are not going to be able to cover it all. I would estimate 2 minutes per slide. So if you have a 60-minute lecture, you want to save 10 minutes for questions. That leaves 50 minutes for content. I would do 25 slides max. Remember, more is not better. People learn more by doing than by being told. So, again, as we're going to talk about on the next slide, we really want to engage our audience more so than give them information for 50 minutes. So I am going to read this slide. You can't teach people everything they need to know. The best you can do is position them where they can find out what they need to know when they need to know it. So providing tools and information on how to access the information they need. And the other thing I would say is that people learn by doing more so than by being told, as I said. So save time in your presentation for people to apply knowledge. There are so many different ways to apply knowledge. One of my interns who I worked with previously, she did a PowerPoint and she had a this or that on the slide. So she was teaching about sugar. And so she would have 2 images, vitamin water or orange juice, this or that, which one is higher in sugar? Or Special K and Frosted Flakes, which one is higher in sugar? And that kind of activity really engages people. They have to apply what they've just learned. It's fun. it's interesting, and it's applicable knowledge because it really, it's about them, their choices that they make every day in the grocery store. You could play a game such as Jeopardy or Family Feud. You could break down into small groups and have discussion. You could give people reflection questions and or have them draw a diagram relevant. One thing I did with people when we were talking about foods of color is they just have a blank sheet of paper where they draw a plate, and on that plate they color it in with the colors that they ate all day yesterday or that day, just to see kind of what colors are present in their diet. And then we brainstorm together foods that represent the colors that are missing from their plate. So there's all kinds of ways that you can apply, and I would say that this is a key piece that takes some creative brainstorming, but is really going to take your presentations to the next level. Engage the audience. We all remember this teacher from Ferris Bueller. It's a lot harder to engage people virtually. If you've ever led a Zoom meeting, you know that it can feel like you're just talking out there to the ether and nobody's listening. So you kind of have to imagine that people are sitting on the edge of their seat, so you can kind of channel that, amazing public speaker inside of you. When you're in person, it's a lot easier to get that dynamic energy from the audience, to see their facial expressions a little bit more, to, hear their feedback right there and then, because they're going to give you feedback right away. But definitely pay attention to your body language, the tone of your voice, your eye contact, and, maybe practice virtually with some friends and family before you do a big presentation for 50 people that you don't know, just so you can see what it feels like. Last but not least, one of my favorite tips when you're creating talks for the community is to appeal to people's head, heart, and stomach. So we tend to focus on the head. We tend, again, you've just finished your master's degree, or maybe you're a few months out or a year out, but you're really steeped in academic literature. You love learning, and this is your career and your field. So you're, reading research, and that is awesome. We want evidence-based practice and evidence-based education. We want to steep what we're teaching people in research. Definitely include primary research studies. You might have some people that are skeptical in the audience, and you do want to demonstrate your technical knowledge. But that's just a small piece of it. You also want to appeal to people's hearts and stomachs. And we appeal to people's hearts through offering them an opportunity for personal transformation. So they learn some technical information or some general information, and we give them a chance to apply that. We also can appeal to people's hearts through stories. So teaching stories personally, or, more general about a client, anonymous, obviously, and very generalized. Teaching stories can be a great way to appeal to people's hearts. And then we also appeal to their stomachs. So depending on the size of the group, if you're talking to 10 people, you could easily bring some food samples, be aware of food allergies, and make sure to communicate all the ingredients that are in the food that you're sampling. But that can be a great way to connect with people. If you don't have the opportunity to actually bring a food, you could share some recipe ideas, or discuss some food ideas. So that is my talk on creating talks for the community. I would love to hear what you all have to say about that. All right, well, this is Rebecca Snow. Again, I am owner and mentor of the Nutrition and Herbal Collective. We have mentorship program and other programs for budding new nutritionists and herbalists. All right, take care.